Donald Trump laid out his plan to clean up Capitol Hill, dubbed Donald Trump's five-point plan for ethics reform. The proposal includes a call to institute a 5-year ban on lobbying by former members of Congress and constitutional amendment to impose term limits. This, as a recent poll shows, that 74% of those surveyed says that Congress is doing a poor job. Joining me now to discuss, Hadley Heath Manning, Mark Serrano, and Gabby Morangello. Gabby, let me start with you. I got to tell you something. To me, this is a slam dunk issue. I think Congress is rated in the one single digit area. And, you know, I read yesterday where Eric Cantor makes $2 million a year. People are scratching their heads like, how does this happen?
Right. I mean, this is one of the best things that Donald Trump could have done at this point in his campaign when he's facing so many other problems, is to tackle an issue that resonates with so many of not only his core supporters, but also Americans across the country. And if you look at this, this is really the first time that he's gone beyond criticizing the unethical behavior that we've seen from administrative officials within the administration and lawmakers to actually offer substantive solutions to the problem. And, you know, he tacked on earlier today another addition to this five-point policy proposal in which he said he would push for a constitutional amendment to impose term limits on members of Congress. So he's really going at it with these proposals, and I think it's a wise move, especially ahead of the third and final debate tomorrow night.
Well, Hadley, if you thought career politicians in D.C. didn't like Donald Trump before, they're certainly going to be upset. I mean, consider this. Issue a lifetime ban against senior executive branch officials from lobbying on behalf of foreign governments. Wink, wink, Clinton Foundation.
That's right, and Trump wants to pass these changes through Congress. He doesn't want to do it through executive order, so hats off to him for wanting to get this as legislation. Luckily for Trump, the votes of members of Congress in the election count the same as your vote and my vote, and so I agree this is a very popular issue. It's going to be one that resonates with people on both sides of the aisle, and independent voters especially, so it's very wise and very timely of him to try to pivot to an issue with a serious reform proposal and get away from some of the issues that have been dogging his campaign recently, especially those related to his personal character, because here, not only does he highlight the policy changes, but he can return to bragging about how he's an outsider and he's going to drain the swamp, and he's bringing sort of an outsider perspective to D.C.
Yeah, Mark, again, it does seem like a no-brainer, at least from a political talking point thing. I mean, you spend time in D.C. Is this possible? Could you get any Congress to go through with this, essentially telling the members who are voting on this that when you leave here, you won't be able to peddle your influence anymore? Because President Obama made similar overtures, and none of the things that he promised were ever put through.
Yeah, he never delivered, Charles. Only an outsider could deliver on something like this. And in an election like this, where we've got regular folks who will turn out to the polls, who turned out in the nomination battle, you know, they can apply the pressure that this will require to pass. And this is an example, Charles, where great policy makes great politics. You know, the Pew Research Center shows that 80% of people do not trust government, and that's nearly an all-time low. Trump is cleverly leveraging mistrust of government, anger at government among the electorate. And think about the position he's putting Hillary Clinton in. What could she possibly respond with to this policy? How could she possibly be credible on ethics reform? I mean, she's, you know, Anthony Weiner's available if she wants a chairman of her blue ribbon panel on ethics reform. And that's far more likely.
Well, I wouldn't be
this is very good politics.
I wouldn't be surprised if it's brought up tomorrow that she may disagree with it. But having said that, Gabby, here's the interesting thing, right? We do complain all the time about Congress, and we throw the bums out and how these guys become rich in Congress and often outside peddling their influence and connections, but we always vote them back in. We always vote our bums back in, right? So is it possible that we say one thing as American voters, but actually we're okay with it as long as our bums keep going back?
Well, I wouldn't say it's that we're okay with it. I think Americans are inclined to give individuals the benefit of the doubt, especially people who they elected to represent them in the first place. And in some cases, you do see elected officials go to Congress on either chamber and completely, you know, abandon everything that they ran on, and they have been voted out. I mean, we saw that with Eric Cantor. We saw that with Renee Elmers, who was primaried this year. That has happened in some occasions. And so I think that the proposal that Donald Trump tacked on to these ethic reforms today, the term limits, is really important. And it is something that's actually receiving support among never-Trump members of Congress. I mean, Ben Sasse came out last night on Twitter and praised Donald Trump for not only going out going out on a limb and actually outlining these ethics reforms, but taking his message and having spent so many months criticizing GOP lawmakers and turning it into actual policy proposals.
Well, we know
this will be good for turnout, Charles.
Is a Tea Party darling, and this is one of the crux of the Tea Party movement. Hadley, before we wrap this up, how much of a difference do you think this makes? I mean, you got 3 weeks left. To your point, I think it's a brilliant move, and no one disagrees with that. But with all the other noise out there, how much do you think this will resonate?
Well, there's about 14% of voters out there in the electorate who are either leaning towards a third-party candidate or say they're undecided or say that they don't want to support Trump or Clinton. And that's really the group that Trump needs to focus on here. And I think with proposals like these, he's making a good effort at getting their attention.
All right, guys. Thank you all.
This will motivate the vote, Charles. This sort of policy will motivate voters.
I think it will. I think one thing I'm telling you, we all hate everybody else's elected official. Thanks.